The invitation to the newly inaugurated robotic dinosaur island promised an unprecedented journey into the distant past, a technological paradise where prehistory came alive through breathtaking mechanical replicas. For Mystery Incorporated, the promise of an innovative theme park was irresistible, an opportunity for a well-deserved rest and, who knows, a new mystery. However, when the mystery machine crossed the shimmering waters and the team disembarked, the roar of the metallic giants sounded less like a grand spectacle and more like an eerie premonition. Robots once programmed to charm began to exhibit alarming malfunctions, behaving aggressively, chasing terrified visitors, and causing havoc everywhere. Panic spread as the desperate owners whispered about a prehistoric spirit possessing the machines. Was it all part of an elaborate staging to promote the park, or was something far more sinister lurking in the shadows of this paradisiacal island that was rapidly transforming into a Jurassic trap, where technology turned against its creators? The central dilemma was clear: would robotic dinosaur island be the pinnacle of innovation or the scene of an unprecedented technological disaster? A tropical breeze caressed their skin and the sun kissed the crystal-clear waters as the mystery machine sailed towards robotic dinosaur island, a true oasis of high technology. Fred, map in hand, pointed to the futuristic structures emerging from the lush vegetation. "Welcome to Jurassic Park. I mean, robotic dinosaur island," he quipped, a mischievous smile on his face. Daphne, elegantly dressed for the occasion, already had her smartphone out, fascinated by the first glimpses of the robots, which moved with unsettlingly real naturalness. Her flashes captured the grandeur of the brontosauruses and the agility of the velociraptors, mechanical though they were. Velma, meanwhile, already had her nose buried in a technical park catalog, muttering about the complexity of the artificial intelligence behind those machines, as if she was already sniffing out an enigma. Scooby and Shaggy, despite a pang of nervousness that always accompanied anything remotely monstrous, couldn't hide their excitement for the promised, prehistoric, buffet, filled with their favorite treats. The island's grand opening was a spectacle in itself. Robotic dinosaurs of all sizes and species, from colossal T-Rexes to tiny Compsognathuses, circulated in designated areas, emitting mechanical roars and hisses that perfectly imitated their biological ancestors. Smiling guides, dressed as fearless explorers, led visitors along the meticulously maintained park paths. Mystery Incorporated was greeted by Mr. Alastair Finch, a portly man with a forced smile that didn't reach his apprehensive eyes, and an evident nervousness he could barely disguise. "What an indescribable honor to have the legendary Mystery Incorporated at our inauguration. We need you more than you can imagine, believe me," he said, his voice almost a whisper, laden with an unexpected urgency. The team immediately realized that something was profoundly wrong behind the facade of entertainment. Finch quickly escorted them to an isolated VIP tent, where, with a choked voice, he described the recent incidents: robots acting erratically, straying from their programmed routes, and worst of all, seemingly possessed by a prehistoric spirit, as the superstitious employees, terrified by the inexplicable events, claimed. Fred, with his usual calm and logic, tried to de-escalate the situation, asking about safety protocols, redundancy systems, and robot maintenance. Finch hedged, deflecting the subject, mentioning inexplicable system failures and the technicians' inability to contain the problems, as if they were dealing with something supernatural. While Daphne tried to comfort a hysterical tourist who swore she saw a robotic pterodactyl fly too low, almost snatching her hat with its metallic claws, Velma had already discreetly moved away to observe the dinosaur's movements. She noticed a robotic Tyrannosaurus Rex, paused for an instant, its red eyes blinking erratically, like a warning signal, before resuming its programmed course. Wiring problem or something far more sinister, she pondered, her mind already working through hypotheses. Scooby and Shaggy, meanwhile, were more concerned with finding the promised, prehistoric snack bar. On their way, they heard sharp screams and, as they approached one of the enclosures, saw a group of tourists running in panic, their faces contorted in fear. A robotic triceratops, which should have been peacefully grazing, was now advancing towards them, its horns lowered menacingly, like a mechanical bull. The two friends, with a unison yell of "zoinks," ran as fast as they could, darting past Fred, Daphne, and Velma. "Scooby, Shaggy. What happened?" Fred asked, alarmed by the sudden wave of terror. "Angry dinosaur. Real dinosaur." Shaggy shrieked, pointing frantically behind him, his eyes wide with terror. Fred realized the situation was rapidly escalating, spiraling out of control. The park owners, desperate, begged for help, their initial arrogance replaced by palpable despair. Velma was already collecting samples from the ground with her magnifying glass, examining the robot footprints, looking for any sign of tampering or mechanical failure. Daphne, with her agility and presence of mind, was already organizing tourists into groups, trying to guide them to a safe area, away from the imminent danger. Scooby and Shaggy, still out of breath, hid behind a dense bush, trembling. It was then that Scooby, absent-mindedly digging in the damp earth, found a small, half-buried electronic chip. He barked at Shaggy, who picked up the chip and examined it, frowning in confusion. Scooby, this doesn't look like an ancient rock a dinosaur would have stepped on," he said, looking at the device with a mix of curiosity and apprehension, realizing it didn't belong in the natural environment. The sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, but the beauty of the twilight was overshadowed by the growing chaos on the island. The roar of the robotic dinosaurs became more frequent, more aggressive, echoing like an infernal symphony in the gloom. The Mystery Incorporated team was surrounded by machines that refused to obey, trapped in a park that had become a cage of iron and circuits. What was supposed to be a relaxing tour had transformed into a desperate race for survival. Fred realized they needed to act fast, before the situation became irreversible. "We have to find out who's behind this, and why. There's no time to lose," he declared, as a robotic Tyrannosaurus Rex roared fiercely in the distance, its red eyes glowing like demonic embers in the deepening darkness. The true adventure on Robotic Dinosaur Island had just begun. Night fell over Robotic Dinosaur Island, but it brought no expected calm. On the contrary, it intensified the sense of imminent danger. Metallic roars echoed in the darkness, mingling with the wind rustling through the palm trees, creating a distorted symphony of terror. The Mystery Incorporated team found itself divided in their strategies, each taking on a crucial role in trying to unravel the mystery and contain the chaos. Fred was determined to decipher the robot's programming, firmly believing that the key to the enigma was hidden within the lines of code that governed those complex machines. He convinced Mr. Finch, with his logical insistence, to take him to the main control room, a futuristic command center filled with glowing screens and incessantly blinking computers. If a prehistoric spirit is possessing the machines, it must have left its digital signature somewhere, Fred said with a touch of irony, as he sat in front of one of the most advanced terminals. Finch, visibly shaken and teary-eyed, merely nodded, a gesture of resignation, and moved away, leaving Fred alone with the complex and enigmatic lines of code that now represented their only hope. While Fred delved into the intricate world of programming, Daphne dedicated herself to an equally crucial and urgent task, protecting the panicked tourists. Fear spread like a virus, infecting everyone, and people ran aimlessly, becoming easy targets for the out-of-control dinosaurs roaming the island. Daphne, with her unwavering calm and natural leadership, began to organize makeshift rescue groups. She used her vast experience in crisis situations to calm people, instructing them to take refuge in safer structures, such as the visitor center and restaurants with reinforced doors, true bunkers against the chaos. "Stay calm. Follow me. We'll get to a safe place, together," she shouted, her voice clear and firm, as she deftly dodged a robotic velociraptor that darted past, its electronic eyes fixed on something in the distance, like a hungry predator. Velma, meanwhile, was on her tireless hunt for signs of sabotage, her analytical mind working overtime. Armed with her trusty magnifying glass and a portable forensic kit, she meticulously searched the areas where the robots had behaved most aggressively. She examined the chip found by Scooby and Shaggy with close attention, realizing it wasn't a standard part component. It was a modification chip, used specifically to alter the behavior of complex systems. This isn't a software glitch, it's intentional. Someone wanted this to happen, she murmured to herself, her glasses slipping slightly down her nose, the tip of a new mystery revealing itself. She followed the trails left by the robots, finding unusual scratch marks on some of the metallic carcasses, as if they had been forced into contact with something sharp and pointed. Scooby and Shaggy, despite their chronic fear of anything resembling dinosaurs, whether robotic or not, were on a mission of their own, driven by a curiosity that overcame their fear. The chip they found deeply intrigued them. They remembered seeing a man, one of the park's technicians, acting strangely near where the chip was found, as if he was hiding something. Driven by curiosity, and perhaps the promise of extra snacks if the mission was successful, they decided to investigate the dense vegetation of the island. Every leaf rustled, every shadow danced, and their imaginations ran wild, transforming branches into sharp claws and bushes into prehistoric monsters. However, the sight of a freshly made trail in the woods, which didn't look like a dinosaur's, spurred them on, guided by a hunch. As the team operated on different fronts, incidents multiplied with terrifying speed. A robotic pterodactyl, off its flight path, swooped over the recreation area, forcing tourists to take desperate shelter. A robotic stegosaurus broke through a containment fence, threatening the safety of one of the main trails and putting more visitors in danger. Fred, in the control room, typed frantically, his fingers flying across the keyboard. The lines of code he was examining were complex, but he noticed a disturbing pattern, a strange sequence of commands, subtly inserted, that seemed to be overriding the robot's original software. It was as if someone had injected a virus, but a very specific virus, designed to cause maximum chaos. Velma, following the scratch marks in the fresh trail, arrived at a more remote area of the island, where she found a small, hidden maintenance hut nestled among the trees, almost camouflaged by the vegetation. The door was ajar, revealing an interior that would be crucial. Upon entering, she found advanced engineering tools, detailed robot diagrams, and a computer that was still on. The screens showed the same command sequence that Fred was investigating, but with a crucial difference: there were remote access logs. Someone was controlling the robots remotely, manually, and not just through predefined programming. External attack, or internal disguised, she whispered, her voice filled with new urgency and a startling revelation. At that very moment, Scooby and Shaggy stumbled upon something unexpected in the vegetation. Hidden under a tangle of vines was a radio communicator, the kind used by park security. Scooby, curious, pressed a button with his paw. A deep, distorted voice echoed, talking about total deactivation and money withdrawal, revealing a sinister plan. The two looked at each other, eyes wide, terrified by the implications of those words. This wasn't the voice of any employee they knew. It was the voice of someone plotting something very serious and dangerous. While Daphne guided the last group of tourists to the relative safety of the visitor center, the loudest and most menacing roar of all echoed, shaking the ground. A robotic Tyrannosaurus Rex, the same one Velma had observed, was now approaching the control center, its red eyes glowing like infernal embers in the darkness. Fred, immersed in his code search, looked up. The control room windows rattled violently, and he could hear the sounds of destruction getting closer. He realized time was running out. Velma, in the maintenance hut, saw the same scene on one of the surveillance screens. She turned to the computer, trying to track the remote access IP, but the system was being disconnected rapidly, as if the attacker knew they were being discovered. The prehistoric spirit was about to launch a decisive attack, and the fate of the island and all its occupants hung by a thread. The tension was palpable, cutting through the air like a sharp blade. The robotic Tyrannosaurus Rex was furiously attacking the control center, its blows resounding like thunder, and Fred knew he had to act fast. Every second was crucial. As he tried to reverse the malicious programming that possessed the robots, the building structure began to groan and give way under the relentless blows of the metallic giant. Velma, in the maintenance hut, managed, for a brief moment and with incredible luck, to trace the last IP address that remotely accessed the system. It was a local address, from within the island itself, which completely ruled out the possibility of an external hacker and pointed, alarmingly, to someone infiltrated, working from within. "The saboteur is here. With us on the island," she exclaimed to herself, grabbing the communicator and trying to warn Fred, her voice filled with urgency. Daphne, hearing the escalating chaos and the approaching sound of destruction, realized she needed an immediate and audacious distraction. She remembered seeing an abandoned golf cart and a series of high-powered floodlights near the park entrance. With her quick and creative mind, she devised a bold plan, risking herself to protect the others. "We need to draw their attention away from Fred. He needs time," she told the braver tourists with her, who, despite their fear, were willing to help. With the assistance of some of them, she managed to start the cart and aim the floodlights at a distant area, creating a loud light and sound show that, she hoped, would attract the out-of-control robots. Scooby and Shaggy, who still had the radio communicator they found, heard the saboteur's voice again. He was giving clear orders, coordinating the robot attacks, and the voice seemed to come from a specific direction, more towards the center of the island. They crept through the dense vegetation, guided by the radio commands. Each step was a mix of terror and determination. Fear was still present, a constant shadow, but curiosity, and the promise of uncovering the mystery, were stronger, propelling them forward. They moved like shadows, avoiding the robotic dinosaurs patrolling the island, their roars echoing in the darkness like infernal laments. Fred, amidst the deafening noise of the T-Rex's blows, which seemed determined to bring down the control center, focused on a specific section of the code, his fingers flying across the keyboard. He realized that the malicious program was not only altering the robots' behavior but also corrupting their central artificial intelligence, making them progressively more aggressive and unpredictable. It was a sophisticated, carefully planned attack. He tried to isolate the virus, but it seemed to multiply every second, making the task almost impossible. "It's like a malignant artificial intelligence, gaining a life of its own," he murmured, frustrated and sweating cold. Velma, following the scratch marks and the fresh trail, ran towards the communication tower. She reached a more remote area of the island, where she finally found a small, hidden maintenance hut among the trees. The door was ajar. Upon entering, she found tools, robot diagrams, and a computer that was on. The screens showed the same command sequence Fred was investigating, but with a difference: there were remote access logs. Someone was controlling the robots remotely, manually, and not just through predefined programming. "External attack," she whispered, her voice filled with new urgency. Meanwhile, Daphne and her makeshift group were having partial success. The light and sound show was drawing some of the robotic dinosaurs away from the control center, giving Fred a breather, but the strategy had its own risks. A robotic Spinosaurus, the largest of the aquatic dinosaurs, emerged from a nearby lake, attracted by the lights, and began chasing the golf cart at surprising speed. Daphne, with quick reflexes and a daring maneuver, made a sharp turn, almost overturning the vehicle, but managing to dodge the attack, her heart pounding in her chest. Scooby and Shaggy, after a tense and fright-filled walk, reached the base of the communication tower, which loomed impressively against the night sky. The voice on the radio was clearer now, and they could hear someone's footsteps inside. They crept in, finding a tangle of wires, antennas, and computers, a true nest of technology. On one of the monitors, they saw the image of a robotic Tyrannosaurus Rex dangerously approaching the control center, the same T-Rex that was attacking Fred. It was then that they saw a figure in front of a control panel, typing rapidly, manipulating the machines. Suddenly, the figure turned, and Scooby and Shaggy cowered behind a pile of dusty boxes, holding their breath. It was Mr. Finch. He was sweating, his eyes wide, and he was manipulating the controls with feverish intensity. He was giving orders to the robots, and the communicator in his hand was the same one Scooby had found. So it was him all along. The prehistoric spirit. Shaggy whispered, as it all clicked. Scooby, with a recognizing yelp and a tinge of anger, realized that Finch was the true villain behind everything. Fred, in the control room, finally managed to isolate the malicious command sequence, feeling a shiver of satisfaction and urgency. He was about to send an emergency shutdown command to all robots when the room lights began to flicker frantically, and a deafening crash echoed. The T-Rex had torn a gaping hole in the wall, and its metallic head was now visible, threatening to devour what remained of the control center. Velma, rushing to the communication tower, spotted Scooby and Shaggy lurking inside. She immediately understood the situation. Fred was in imminent danger, and the saboteur was right there, in the tower. Time was rapidly running out for Mystery Incorporated and for Robotic Dinosaur Island. The communication tower, now revealed as the villain's lair, became the epicenter of the final confrontation. Velma, with her sharp insight, connected the dots in her mind, the traced local IP, the presence of the radio communicator, and, finally, the nervous figure of Mr. Finch manipulating the controls in the tower. "So, the prehistoric spirit is actually Mr. Finch," she exclaimed, advancing resolutely into the tower, her voice filled with a mixture of indignation and relief at having unraveled the mystery. Scooby and Shaggy, though trembling with fear, joined her, determined to help their friends. Finch, upon seeing Velma and the imminent exposure of his actions, let out a startled cry, a guttural sound of panic, and tried to hide something behind his back, like a child caught in the act. "What are you doing here? How did you find me?" he stammered, his voice laden with nervousness and despair. Velma pointed to the computer he was working on and to the communicator he was trying to conceal in his hand. "You are responsible for all of this, aren't you? For the robot malfunctions, for the attacks, everything. You put everyone in danger." Meanwhile, Fred, in the control room, was in a frantic race against time. The T-Rex was destroying the room, its blows echoing like the end of the world, and he knew that in a matter of minutes the main system would be irrecoverable, leading the park to total ruin. He was typing furiously, his fingers flying across the keyboard, trying to send a master shutdown command before it was too late. He could hear Velma's voice on the communicator connected to the park's system. "Finch is behind everything." Fred felt a shock of recognition, a wave of pieces falling into place in his mind. Finch's nervous behavior, his reluctance to allow full access to the systems, it all made sense now, revealing the web of intrigue. Daphne, in the golf cart, continued her dangerous mission to distract the robots with lights and sounds. She maneuvered with mastery, dodging the incessant dinosaur attacks. However, the robotic Spinosaurus seemed to be gaining ground, its speed and ferocity surprising. Its metallic jaws clamped dangerously close to the back of the cart, and Daphne could feel the heat of its mechanical breath. She knew she couldn't hold it off for much longer. Back in the tower, Finch, cornered and with his plan exposed, began to confess. His voice, once hesitant and stammering, was now filled with frustration, bitterness, and a touch of megalomania. "Yes. It was me. This park was my life's dream, my legacy. But the investors wanted to cut costs, use cheap parts, inferior software. They didn't listen to me. They ignored me. I knew it would go wrong," he burst out, his voice choked with rage. "I wanted to prove the system was flawed, that they needed to invest more. I thought that if the dinosaurs went out of control, they would be forced to listen to me, to finance the necessary improvements. And, as a bonus, blaming a prehistoric spirit would be a great marketing ploy for a mystery, it would attract more attention to the park, and to me." Velma interrupted him abruptly, her voice firm and unwavering, filled with indignation. "But you put hundreds of people's lives at risk. What you wanted was sabotage, Finch, not proof of failure. You wanted chaos." Finch, with an insane glint in his eyes, pressed a button on his control panel, his last act of defiance. "I was going to shut them down at the last minute. I had everything under control. But now you've ruined everything. I won't let you stop me from proving my point." He pointed a remote control at one of the monitors, where the image of a robotic Tyrannosaurus Rex dangerously approaching the control center was displayed. "Attack. Destroy everything. The T-Rex in Fred's control room intensified its attacks, and the building began to crumble around him, chunks of plaster and metal falling. Fred, with trembling but steady hands, was inches away from sending the final command, feeling the urgency of every millisecond. "I need 1 minute. Just 1 minute, and I can do it," he shouted to himself, his voice mixing with the sound of destruction. In the tower, Scooby and Shaggy, seeing Finch about to worsen the situation and cause an even greater catastrophe, acted purely on instinct, driven by loyalty to their friends. Scooby, with a loud and surprising bark, lunged at Finch, knocking the communicator from his hand. Shaggy, in a quick and clumsy move, grabbed the communicator that fell to the floor, but Finch angrily tried to snatch it back. Confusion set in, a struggle for control of the device. During the fight for the communicator, it fell to the ground and was mercilessly crushed under Shaggy's clumsy boot, who unwittingly put an end to the threat. The exact moment the communicator was destroyed, Fred, in the control room, managed to send the master shutdown command to the entire robot network. A deafening silence filled the island, a sudden and overwhelming relief. The roars of the robotic dinosaurs abruptly ceased. Their red eyes went out, and the metallic giants stood motionless, frozen in their aggressive poses, like statues from a nightmare. The T-Rex, which was about to deliver the final blow to the control room, stopped inches from Fred, its metallic arm suspended in the air, a monument to the danger that had just been averted. Daphne, who was about to be reached by the robotic Spinosaurus's jaws, saw the giant freeze in place, its sensors inactive. She abruptly stopped the golf cart, panting with relief, her body trembling with adrenaline. In the tower, Finch looked at the broken communicator and the monitors, where all the dinosaurs were now inactive. A mixture of rage and despair overwhelmed him, his face contorted in a mask of defeat. Velma, with her unquestionable authority, called the park authorities and explained the situation in detail. Finch was arrested, his frustration and paranoia culminating in an irresponsible act of sabotage. The island was silent. The threat had passed. Mystery Incorporated had unraveled the mystery of the prehistoric spirit, proving that the truth was far more mundane and dangerous. But the question remained, how to rebuild trust in this technological paradise now that its own creators had become its potential destroyers. The mystery had been solved, but the scars of distrust and trauma would remain, a grim reminder of the dangers of technology in the wrong hands. Months passed since the terrifying incidents on Robotic Dinosaur Island. Mystery Incorporated followed the news of the park's reconstruction with particular interest, attentive to the developments of a case that had deeply marked them. Mr. Finch, after being tried, received a severe sentence for sabotage and for endangering lives, an outcome that, although just, brought a touch of sadness for a brilliant talent that had been consumed by frustration and madness. The park owners, in turn, learned their lesson the hard and painful way, with financial losses and a tarnished reputation. They invested heavily in cybersecurity, hiring a new team of highly qualified engineers and implementing rigorous maintenance protocols that had previously been neglected. The island was reopened to the public, but with a new focus on safety, transparency, and responsibility. The robotic dinosaurs, now under stricter control and with enhanced security systems, moved with the same majesty as before, but without the palpable threat of a sudden attack. Mystery Incorporated received a formal and warm invitation to the re-inauguration, a gesture of gratitude and recognition from the owners for the team's crucial role. Fred, Daphne, Velma, Scooby, and Shaggy accepted, curious to see the changes and the results of their efforts. Upon arriving, they immediately noticed the stark difference. There were more discreet security cameras, more visible supervisory staff, and the robots themselves seemed calmer, as Scooby and Shaggy humorously observed. Fred spoke at length with the new head of security, a brilliant former software engineer who understood the complexity of the systems and the importance of prevention. "We firmly believe that technology is a tool for good, not an enemy to be feared," he told Fred with conviction, "and we are determined to ensure that it is used responsibly and ethically, never again to cause chaos." Daphne, meanwhile, watched families enjoying themselves in the park, their laughter and shouts of joy replacing the screams of panic that once echoed. Children played freely as the robotic dinosaurs passed, a comforting reminder that the park had regained its innocence and its original purpose of entertainment. She felt a pang of satisfaction seeing the joy on people's faces, knowing her team had contributed to restoring peace. "It's good to see that not everything was lost, that they managed to recover," she commented to Velma, with a hopeful smile. Velma, always the most analytical, conducted an informal and discreet inspection of the systems. She noted the new firewalls, the state-of-the-art intrusion detection systems, and the emergency backups that could prevent future catastrophes. The traumatic experience with Finch had forced the park to evolve, to reinvent itself based on past mistakes. It's a good example of how a disaster can, ironically, lead to significant improvements and valuable learning, she pondered, jotting down some details in her notepad, already thinking about a new scientific article on the case. She even noticed a small, makeshift museum in the visitor center, telling the story of the incident and how security had been reinforced, a testament to the park's transparency. Scooby and Shaggy, relieved that there were no more out-of-control robotic dinosaurs, were finally relaxing, savoring a new flavor of prehistoric Scooby snacks that the park had launched in their honor. They even dared to take some photos with the harmless robots, although they still maintained a safe distance, with one eye on the robot and the other on the nearest exit. "These dinosaurs aren't so scary when they're in a good mood, huh, Scooby?" Shaggy said, and Scooby barked in agreement, happy to have a full stomach and be safe, as a robotic brontosaurus gently passed by them, its large metallic paws posing no threat. Mystery Incorporated had brilliantly solved the case, but the island experience left an indelible mark on each of them. They had faced a different kind of monster, a technological monster, created by the human mind itself, a force more treacherous than any ghost. The adventure reminded them that not every mystery involves ghosts or supernatural creatures, and that the greatest challenge often lies in deciphering human nature, with its complexities, hidden motivations, and its capacity to cause both chaos and wonder. At the end of the day, as the mystery machine departed from the island, its headlights illuminating the night, the team reflected on the adventure. Fred drove, his eyes fixed on the road leading to the next adventure. "This case showed us that danger can come from where we least expect it, even in a state-of-the-art technological paradise," he said, his voice filled with deep reflection. Daphne nodded, looking at the island lights fading behind them. "And that unchecked ambition, without ethics or supervision, can be more destructive than any legendary monster." Velma, looking at the notes in her pad, added, her voice full of conviction, "But the truth always finds a way, no matter how well hidden it is. There's always a logic behind the chaos." Scooby and Shaggy, dozing in the back seat, only dreamed of more Scooby snacks and the next adventure, happy to have survived and ready for whatever came next. Robotic Dinosaur Island had been a challenging and revealing chapter, but Mystery Incorporated was ready for the next mystery awaiting them, be it ghostly, technological, or purely human. Robotic Dinosaur Island, once a metallic nightmare of chaos and terror, was reborn from the ashes of sabotage as a testament to human resilience and the power of learning. Mystery Incorporated departed with the certainty that truth, no matter how intricate and hidden, always prevails, revealing that the most fearsome monsters are often creations of human ambition and negligence. The park, now safe and improved by hard-learned lessons, whispered the story of a mystery unraveled, a reminder that the true spirit of adventure lies not only in solving enigmas but also in the incessant pursuit of understanding. The case of Robotic Dinosaur Island concluded, but it left the team with a sense of closure and the reward of another job well done, preparing them for the enigmas that the future, technological or supernatural, held in store, ready for any challenge.